The excitement for Tesla's reveal of the Robotaxi Cybercab on August 8th is not only rising, but is now going supernova. While it would be smart to be cautious and keep expectations in check, along comes a patent from Tesla that is getting people very excited. This patent shows in detail how Tesla plans on an automated self-cleaning and self-sanitizing system. The Cybercab will have several ways to detect and to eliminate dirt and bacteria, but it goes way beyond this. I promise you, you'll be very, very impressed with today's show. I've got Scott Walter joining us. Today's not going to be about robots. It's going to be about the Cybercab. I'm very excited. Thank you so much, Scott.
Yeah, same here. I never thought I would be getting into reading patents, but lately I have been. And that's all because of SETI Park. So, as we know, he's an ex-user over in Korea that just loves reading patents and explaining them to us. And he keeps pulling up some great ones. And this is one that got everyone talking in the community last week. So props to SETI and his ability to sort of not only find them, but to give us a little bit of insight. And then the reading gets to be pretty entertaining. So you and I talked a little bit about it last night. And you went from thinking, I'm not quite so sure, to when you realize what's going on in there, it's pretty exciting. Yeah. So you were just muted there for a second there, Herbert. Why?
Why did I mute myself? Because I coughed?
Yeah, exactly. And you know what that is?
What?
That's a sanitation event, according to the patent. Okay. So the whole idea, and again, the Tesla has a frameless door, right? And the problem with the frameless door is making sure that the window is sealed properly in there. And so a lot of times cars have that, so you can open and close the door mechanically without compromising the window that's on there. So if you want to have a frameless door, you got to solve the problem. You either got to solve it with hardware, right? Or you solve it with software. So you open up the door in a Tesla and the window goes down. So this is Tesla's mentality, is that sometimes the solutions are in just writing good software, and software needs good data to be able to do it. So one of the things the patent keeps on talking about is looking for what we'll call the sanitation event. It's constantly monitoring what's going on in the cabin. So it knows how many passengers are in there. It knows what objects are in there. It knows what electronics might be around there. It knows if there's been any pets in there and everything else. And it's tracking everything. So if you cough or if you sneeze, it knows where it is, and it will log that, and it will create a sanitation procedure for being able to clean that. Might be like real time at the moment, where they suddenly change the vents and do a couple other things, maybe put some aerosols in there to quickly sanitize what's going on, or it may be something they have to take care of later on, but it's all going on there. The other thing is they know every surface you've touched.
Wow.
So they know where the cleaning has to happen. So again, it's rather fascinating what that patent is talking about and how they're going to do a lot of these things real time, and then make all kinds of decisions about the different passengers, passenger types, upcoming trips, what should be going on. And if you want to bring up a couple of those patents, let's go right ahead and look at them.
Okay, well, first of all, that just blows my mind what you just said there. So because they have the in-cabin camera, but because they have sensors all over, you can explain to me all the sensors, humidity sensor, environmental sensors,
temperature sensor, and a gas sensor. Yes.
Right.
So they have a variety. Yes.
Of emissions.
So emissions testing. And based on that, they will make some sort of decisions of what's going on. So now the temperature sensor is not just to track the temperature of the vehicle, but also the passengers.
Wow.
And there was one description of a possible use case of being able to identify that you may have a passenger that is ill, either based on some other history you have about them. They kind of hinted at maybe having like something that could test for COVID, but I'm not quite sure if that's in there, if there was just as a possibility, but they would monitor the temperature and also kind of connect the dots between different events. Like, oh, this person wants to go to the hospital and they clearly have a fever. Then that means the car is kind of compromised from that standpoint. We have to do an extra sanitation event or do something else to make sure the car is clean. Maybe they can do it just with what's on board, or they decide it's time for deep cleaning and then just send it somewhere else. The other thing is that on your app, if you're a germaphobe, you really put down that you're very sensitive to it, or that you have allergies or something like that to pets. they'll know to make sure that the car has not had any pets in there for a while, and that if they really have to get somewhere, they will decide to basically en route go ahead and take what they have to do to make sure the car is very much sanitized. And they do that the way, I guess you could say, a self-cleaning oven works. They crank
Yeah.
up the temperature. They're talking about cranking up to
Wow.
57 degrees
Right.
Celsius, okay? Not
Yeah.
Fahrenheit, Celsius. And then changing the humidity depending, and also putting, potentially aerosols in there, some sort of vapors. So I was kind of joking. It means the Cybercab's going to be vaping, but to go through and help with the sanitation. Now, there's other things that they do. So,
Yeah.
do you know anyone that has allergies in their house, and
What do you mean?
stuff that they
Yeah.
put on their HVAC system?
Of course. What do you mean? What? Everybody
Well,
has allergies.
HEPA
in their
filters
house.
would be one thing,
HEPA
right?
filters. Yeah.
But there's other sanitizing agents. You've probably seen there are these UV lights that you can use
Yes.
to sanitize air as
Yeah.
well.
Yeah.
So they are looking at also using UV light in the interior. I imagine they could potentially also put it in the HVAC system and just decide what to do. So, someone sneezes in the car, suddenly they change the airflow. Because I know, when we're in a car ride and something like that, and one of us sneezes, the first thing my wife does, like, get the window down, stuff like that, try to air everything up. So you can imagine it just be doing things like that real time to make
Brilliant.
sure
Yeah.
it stays clean. And because if you don't clean up a spill right away, it gets worse over time, right? The best thing is to try to clean it up at the moment. So it's the same thing, trying to do what they can in the moment. And if it's really bad, it's like, okay, we've got to bring it over to another station somewhere.
Okay, so I love the introduction because it's so exciting. It's unbelievable
Mhm.
that this car can even do all this. But give me the entire list of all the sensors that it can detect.
Yeah, I'm trying to think
And
where
then-
it was. Where it
And
was on
then
one
give
page.
me the entire list of all the things that they would use to sanitize and to clean it. And then
Mhm.
what we'll do is we'll also explain how the car can actually be sent to a robotaxi, and then it might actually sometimes it may need to go to a sanitation center, whether it's a supercharger that set up for a car wash. It cleans the inside. You've got an explanation of how they will actually clean the inside, and then they send it back to you, and all this. But just like this thing that blows me away is this image here,
Mhm.
which is
Exactly.
we all know our Teslas, and our Teslas has this new unique HVAC system, and they did this 8 years ago. But it's perfect for this scenario because now they can direct where they want to send the airflow, or like you said, heat, or they can do it through some sort of spritzer maybe. But if they saw that you touched the steering wheel for some reason, then they'll sanitize it. But
Right.
yeah, tell me the whole list of all the sensors first, and then
Yes.
all of the ways that they'll sanitize.
So one of the examples is, of course, they have cameras in there that are going to register different events, and that might be in combination with acoustic sensors that would hear a sneeze or something like that. And what's sort of ironic, even though it's sort of about maybe robotaxi, I'm not sure if they necessarily mention robotaxi in there, but if someone sneezes on the steering wheel, it's like, well, wait a minute, I thought they don't have steering wheels, but that would be talking about your Tesla, my Tesla, if it was to
Right.
be able to go in the fleet. And the other thing is that if you go into any car and you try to adjust the air vents, how do you do it?
Right? Yeah, like manually with fingers?
Manually. I mean, it's like I'm not aware of even top end ones where there's some sort of automatic way being able to do it. You always have to go ahead and touch it. A Tesla, you don't need to do that. You never need to do that, as far as I know. And
Mhm.
they're able to, through software, redirect the airflow wherever it needs to be, and of course,
Mhm.
be able to control it. And they could probably add more things. So, like you say, they could be adding misters or spritzers or something like that to put something in there. So if they see that you sneeze on the steering wheel, they're like, well, let's just go ahead and do something, and we can direct warmer air over it that might be able to sanitize it. They've also talked about on certain surfaces having like a heating pad underneath it that would also use that to heat it up in case it looks like, a surface has been touched a lot, and we know the person is a patient or something like that. So
That's
yet
brilliant.
again another example.
Yeah.
And as something Jeff Lutz pointed out is that there's also other kinds of surfaces you can use that will be very easy for cleaning and also can reduce spread of microbes. So there's these antimicrobial kind of mats and other surfaces you can potentially put on things. So they may put that on a lot of surfaces that, let's say, are frequently touched or very sensitive to something like that, that you just make sure.
Yeah. So that's the cleaning part of it. This is brilliant. So
Yeah.
tell me about the ways that they clean it, because they can use sunlight. They can use. By the
UV.
way, I do
Mhm.
want to point this out because this is so cool. they will automate the movement of any parts. They can
Yeah.
move the seat forward, they can move the steering wheel forward, they can even move the seat belts. So they
Yep.
can move the seat belts around so that you can then reach into the back of the seats, for example. This is the heating pad. I'm assuming that even the computer screen, if they saw that you touched the computer screen, now when I come in, I don't want to have your grubbly hands all over it. So they will use heat maybe on the computer screen to
And
sanitize
potentially
that.
something else that they showed that they do have some ultraviolet light that they can
Right?
direct in certain areas, but of course they can only point it here or there.
Yeah.
And what they will do is they will actually point it on the display screen. So not only would that sort of sanitize the display screen from anything, but the display screen is articulated
Reflects.
and it will be able to move around, which means they're going to use it like a mirror to
Yeah.
deflect the ultraviolet light into different nooks and crannies in different places. So again, it's
That's
just like,
brilliant.
remember when they first were
What?
coming out with that? It's like
Yeah.
they must have already been thinking about it at that point. And it's more than just an ergonomic thing to make it easier for you and me to look at it. It's like, well, what
Yeah.
other use can we get out of something like that?
And then even the sunlight, right? Somehow
Yep.
sunlight can be and then they can move the car around, I guess, automated moving. I'm going to move
Move it, and then you move the seats
shuffle
to
here,
expose
shuffle there.
certain surfaces here and there to make sure that they're adequately exposed. Yeah, it goes on and on because they talk about keep on having these sanitation procedures that they've thought through. That when this event happens, what are the next things we're supposed to do? Okay, there we go. An example of using the
What's this?
display to be able to
Okay.
reflect light
Oh
where you
my
want it.
gosh. So on the seat here or on the back of the car seat here.
Yeah.
That is so brilliant. So this is the UV light will be somehow attached to here, the
Yep.
top. That's so
Yeah.
smart. Oh my gosh, they really thought through of everything. So what else do we know about this patent? You want to talk about how this thing here, so that if they do
Okay.
take it to a
So
sanitation area, what is this?
yes. So now you would want to have these robotic arms that would be able to go in and let's say remove debris or do cleaning because you can only do so much by blowing air around and using spray and stuff like that. Sometimes you have to go in there and actually manually kind of
Yeah.
scrub things. And either you do that with like an Optimus bot, or in this case, what are probably going to be more dedicated kind of robots for it. And
Mhm.
at this point, I would say they are more or less trying to make sure they have a patent on the idea of doing it automatically without getting into the great details because they don't dive into really deep details of these sanitation procedures they're going through, just mentioning that there will be one for being able to do this kind of thing. So when I look at that, it's like, wow, it looks an awful lot like the painting robot lines that I'm used to seeing in automotive plants where you have a couple of bots next to the car to be able to move around the outside and maybe an arm for being able to open a door or close a door to be able to get access. So there's a variety of ways they can go in there clean up because people might be leaving litter in there and coffee cups and everything else that you need to then remove and of course do something to clean it. And I'm sure they're going to find what's going to be the best way to be able to clean the cup
Mm,
holders.
okay.
Do you find some nice way to be able to drain it or to keep it from getting the coffee spills in there, or do you have some sort of insert that's always in there every time it goes out to make sure so when it spills,
Mm,
they're probably thinking all sorts of things like that. But there are a variety of other ways that you could do it without having like hose it down in there. So I mean that's one way if you want to do a really big deep cleaning, but then of course you have to make sure the whole interior is sort of water resistant or waterproof. But something that is more effective is just using air jet. So if you ever take high, compressed air and then get that
yeah.
jet coming out, it can just knock all sorts of things around. Now the problem is it creates a dust storm, which is
Okay.
not a bad thing if you have something to remove the dust out. So if you have really good cross ventilation, really good flow coming through there, and if you pulse and control the compressed air and like aim it where it's supposed to be, because remember that's the whole idea of a sanitation event. Something happened over in this corner. We caught it. We,
Yeah.
we caught it in real time. We know where it is. We don't have to go in and investigate ahead of time. We know it's there, and we're figuring out what's going to be the best course of events to do based on all these other things we got to clean. Because sometimes you want to start on one side and move your way out because of everything else going along here. So they can just go in and just start blowing it around and then sucking it out at the same time. And a lot of us may know that you can buy these power tools, like drills and even saws that have built-in vacuum cleaners on them. So
Mhm.
as you're doing the process, right, everything, all the dust, everything, the mess is cleaned up real time. So that's why I'm saying the same idea is that, you blow the air down there, you're creating a big mess, but at the same time, you can be extracting that mess as you go
Yeah, so
around.
what I'm hearing you say is like, could you like it like so the cool thing about Tesla is they have these
Mhm.
factories,
Yep.
and they already have to have these areas where it's like there's no dust particles. And what they do is they create negative air pressure.
Yep.
So they blow air, and then if there is any dust, it goes up, and then they
It gets pulled out.
suck it out because of the negative air pressure. It gets automatic, everything, all the air gets sucked out of that room. They could do something similar with the entire cabin of the
Right.
car, right?
Right.
And so
Yes.
you're saying that use the air vents to just blow air everywhere, or they already know where they need to do it, but then at the
Mhm.
same time, suck all everything that's inside the
Suck it
car
out where you need. Exactly. So as you're doing that, you would take it out. So, um, with your dust busters and stuff like that, a lot of times they can't quite get the dust, and it turns out like if you just give a puff of air in there, it will knock it up, and your dust buster will suck it out. So you do something along that way, and it doesn't just have to be air. So a lot of people are aware of this process called water jet cutting, where you're taking a high
Wow.
pressure water jet and going down there and being able to cut
Yeah.
steel and everything else. The reality is the water is not cutting it. It's the abrasive you put in the water. So you put in something else. You could be doing the same thing with these jets, is that you could be adding
So, yeah.
something else that helps as a cleaning agent
Yeah.
that, would allow you to do kind of a dry cleaning, if you want to think of it that way. So
Right.
we'll sanitize, some kind of solvent in there that might loosen up something that, sticking on there, but be able to kind of get it out very, very quickly. So there's
Yeah.
probably a variety of ways you could do it without having to hose it down
Well,
and
they
come
might
back and
hose
it's
it
going to be
down,
really clean.
but if they hose it down, then
Oh
they might
yeah.
be able to use the HVAC system to dry everything up
To
inside
dry it
really
if you have
quickly.
to, but again, if you
Blowing.
look at like when you go out there with the water jet you have for cleaning your car, you'd be surprised how little water it actually
Mhm.
uses. So the idea is it's more of an air jet that you're using. It's the high pressure air jet that's doing
Mhm.
it with some water mixed in, because now the heavier weight water molecules can hit the dirt and lift it off. So that's the same thing with like putting an abrasive into a water jet, is you have something that's a little bit heavier going in when it smashes in. So they could put something a little bit different. And again, if they are using water, they probably use such a sparse amount of water at such a high pressure, it'll clean everything up. And again, you know, dry it out at the same time. So you could be going along and just sucking the
Mhm.
water out and making sure that the seats aren't going to be wet when the next occupant gets in there. Plus, on the way, they said temperature up to 57 degrees Celsius. That's pretty high. Now, before they do these things, they are checking to make sure there's like a no person in the car, right?
Mhm.
Wherever that event's going to happen. They're also making sure there's no electronics left behind, because they don't want to bake the electronics
Mhm.
unnecessarily. So it's like check and make sure there's no electronics, there's no pets, there's no groceries. So all the
Wow.
sanitation events are based around kind of what's in the car at the time and what's appropriate for what's there and where it is. It's an interesting patent. So you once again we'll have to show SETI's link that he has
Yeah.
to go ahead and find this patent, and you can download it. It ends up going to some sort of Google's doc search that then has a link to the PDF, and you can read it. I can't remember how many pages it's, but it's pretty long
Pretty
and in
cool.
many ways very entertaining.
So, okay, let's review some of the pages here that I thought was pretty cool. So, this is an explanation of what a robotaxi event might occur. So, I am
Hmm.
in my owner's home, right? I'm in
Yep.
the owner's home right now, and I've got my car. I'm going to go ahead and drive it, or have it drive me to my workplace. Then I
Hmm.
go, okay, I'm going to be working now for the next 8 hours. I'm going to go ahead and send this out to be a robotaxi. So, it gets sent out, and then it picks up somebody, a stranger picks them up
Yep.
at a pickup spot, drops them off. Now, on the way back, they might pick up another person,
Repeatedly.
or
Yep.
it might be so dirty, it might go,
Hmm.
okay, I need to go to a sanitation spot. So, before we explain how that happens here, then at some point, oh, it looks like that regardless of what happens at that day, it's going to go to the sanitation
At the
spot
very end, exactly.
before it goes to me. So I feel like, oh my God, it's always brand new. It's like the best cleanup that's
Hmm.
possible for me. But this part here, what you pointed out was that as they pick up a passenger and then they drop them off, they know what that passenger did. That person just sat on the back right seat. They touched the door and they touched the front of the seat, the back of the front seat. And that was it. They didn't touch anything else. They're able to create what you call a sanitation procedure. They
Hmm.
detect the absence of entities in a closed space. You just walked us through that. No
Yep.
humans, no materials. Detect environmental conditions. They knew if I sneeze, they knew
Hmm.
what the conditions are in the car. Determine absence of entities based on sensor data. Generate a sanitation routine based on sensor data. Cause a component associated with enclosed space. Implement the sanitation routine.
So that's the overall procedure they're going through, and a lot of it is again based on not only what they observe, but knowing destinations. So they do point out in there that if they
Right.
bring someone to a hospital or pick someone up from a hospital, they'll make an assumption that that person may be ill or may have been exposed to pathogens that they could
Wow.
potentially bring into the car with them, and that they will go through an extra sanitation event. Now, it may not mean that the car is dirty, that it has to go to the sanitation station to do that. It may be just like, well, we're not sure about the air quality and other things in there. So we want to make sure we circulate it very heavily. And again, UV light everywhere just to make sure the next person that is able to get it is not going to be exposed to those things. So they've thought about it. That's why I said it's like it's got almost this germaphobe mode that if you
Yeah.
say that you need to have the car very clean, it will make sure it's very clean. Probably if you have a pet allergy, it will make sure to set like a no pets car. And of course, if a person tries to get a pet in the car, they'll probably
They
like,
know.
oh, you're not allowed to do it, or you get a big
Or
fine, something
or
like
they'll
that.
know.
So it
Yeah.
doesn't happen. Or you just do something to make sure the car is really clean and doesn't have any dog hair, cat hairs in there that could trigger someone's allergy.
Brilliant. Let's walk through some of the parts of the patent. So this is Seti Park, and you should follow him.
Absolutely
They
follow them.
create the patent. So you're looking at the configuration of a sanitation system used to sanitize enclosed spaces. It uses sensors, control systems, HVAC system, lighting, humidity, etc. These can work in conjunction to perform the sanitation process. This is what we showed earlier. All sorts of different sensors. There's of course a computer system, and it controls all of these things. This figure 4A to 4C methods of sanitizing various surfaces using the HVAC system. You're blowing warm air towards the top of the steering wheel or door windows and central display. This is an example of just using the HVAC system. They can blow the air wherever they see somebody touched it. Figure 5 shows exposing various parts of sanitizing light. That's UV, steam, or heated air by
Yep.
adjusting the positions of the vehicle seats and steering wheels. Explains the process of automatically extending the seatbelt for sanitation. Effective management of parts are usually hidden and difficult to sanitize. They can move the seats, they can move the steering wheel, and then the seat belts as well. And then the figure 7A to C show methods of thermal management and sanitation of touchscreens and other contact surfaces inside the vehicle, active heating elements and passive materials alone or in combination of frequently touched surfaces. Man, this is so smart. Touchscreens. I mean, I was asking the question, why can't my phone already do this? Why can't my phone automatically just heat up the screen and sanitize it for me?
Well, actually, it's very easy. Just take your phone and throw it into like a Faraday cage for an hour.
Sure.
It'll come out really hot. I've had that happen before. Whatever. It's actually had no cell connection.
Heat transfer, right? Touch surfaces. Yep. So whatever you touch, it could already be automatically or they want to, they can sanitize it. Vehicle orientation. This is the part where it's cool. They can just drive. I can move, inch forward, inch back.
No, I'm always trying to do the opposite of that. I'm trying to get the least amount of sunlight in there so my car doesn't bake.
I thought it was brilliant. And then the central display at various angles that you were talking about, they can move the thing to reflect the light if it's needed. This is it right here where the lights are, the screen is reflecting. So when I move the UV light hit this part, UV light hit this part. It is so smart. If it's a severe contamination in the vehicle, they're going to move it to they're going to move to a service center, a sanitation center, and have external service robots to sanitize both the interior and exterior. So this is the idea that you're going to take it to this car wash, and it's going to be both interior. It's going to be all automated. This is how it's going to work. So my gosh, you got passenger safety, you got efficient operation, customized sanitation, increased reliability because of the shared service, hygiene issues. Passenger trust can be increased. It's brilliant. It's brilliant. I mean, I can't believe they even thought of all of this, but all the technology that they were introducing 6 years ago, it's here. And this is why they did a lot of that.
I'll point out that they probably put in there thinking about this patent, but beforehand is that they talk about a lot of sensors and they list a lot of those sensors. And the reason they list all those sensors, not because they actually are planning to put it in there, but to cover all the possibilities in the patent. So when you go through there, a lot of the scenarios almost read like a previous scenario, but there's like one more little kind of subtle, vague instance in there that they want to make sure they get across. The other thing that they talk about a lot in there is that to be able to track these sanitation events or see what's going on, they need proper lighting and control of the lighting. And they're talking in there about the LED strips.
Yeah.
So remember the appearance of the
Explains.
LED strips are coming in there. It's not just about mood lighting anymore. It also
Yeah.
has another purpose that
So
they were probably
explain that
already
to me
thinking
again.
about years ago. Yeah.
So the new Model 3 enhanced
Hmm.
the upgraded Model 3 and all these new models of Model Ys and all that. They all have this beautiful LED strip that goes around the
Hmm.
cabin of the inside of the cabin. People think it's mood lighting, makes it look cool. What's the other reason for that?
It makes it easier for them to sort of see surfaces that may be dirty because they can control the lighting to be able to get exactly the lighting they need to be able to see something. And it's
Interesting.
possible with LEDs to create lighting that is not visible to us, but would be visible to a sensor. Say, oh,
I
look,
see.
that's where all the fingerprints are. That's where all the smudge marks are. I can
Oh,
see those things. So all I have
I
to do is
see.
change the light. Now, I don't think it's going to be generating, UV light or anything like that, or any sort of
Yeah,
sanitizing beams coming out of the thing. But the illumination will be very important for them to be able to see exactly where the problematic areas are. So
yeah.
again, you read these things, you begin to realize, wait a minute, didn't they just put something in the car that's like that? So again, the adjustable screen, as well as the lighting that's going in there, is that they've been playing this as a long game for quite a while.
That's great. Okay, so we're gonna wait to see what the robo taxi looks like. Now, to be cautious, right? Just because we saw a patent doesn't mean many
Right.
times patents are there. They're just there. There, nobody actually creates a product out of this. But you were saying that this one though reads like they've really given a lot of thought. They've really
Hmm.
figured this out. They really
It's
are. What's
it's
your percentage chance that it'll actually come true? This will be
there's
what we
a
see.
really good chance because part of it is like, oh, they're not going to put that sensor in there or that sensor in there or something else, but all the other things they talk about, they already have those controls in there. It's just a
Hmm.
software problem, and it's a data collection problem. And I think Jeff Lutz keeps on talking about it's always about the data. I mean, whoever has the most data wins in what you do with that data. So they're always collecting lots of data, and that's what they want to see from this. They already have the sensors in there with a camera system to be able to tell what's going on, to and they can tell which passengers are in which seats. They can probably even tell from the movement of the seats. We've been told in the past the pre-tensioning of the seat belts that will happen before an accident happens. They know how much based on the weight of it. So they got a lot of data in there, and they're going to be
Yeah.
collecting more and more of this to know where the problems are. So even if they don't implement some of these things, they're definitely going to implement the data collection. That's for sure, because that's just software, and they
Yeah.
can. And so your car and my car will be able to have that in there as well, even though they're several years old.
Yeah, I remember a feature that Elon talked about where it can now detect if your child or child seat is sitting there or not. Such
Yes.
a simple little thing, but
Yes.
obviously very
Again,
valuable to know if there's a child sitting there. But now it can be used to know whether or not there was a passenger or not in that seat.
yes. Yes. And again, you can see that the two are kind of being combined together here, that they've been thinking about it and implementing it because they want to know, is there a breathing person back? Because there's all kinds of things they were doing in the sensors. They were checking for temperature, they're checking for like slight movement and all these other things to be able to tell the person. So that could be a pet, that could be a child. So they've already been working on these algorithms, no doubt about it.
That's brilliant. Thank you for walking me through this. I've already covered this topic before, but you got me so excited when you finally explained that they actually know everything you touch, everything you do, and all these different ways that they're going to clean it. It's brilliant. So smart. I can't wait to see this. And this is something they could license. They would have to license. If somebody, any other company wanted to create robo taxi,
Mhm.
they would need to think through how to make it
Yes, do the
sanitized.
same
And
thing.
so
Mhm.
it's a
And
hardware software thing, not just a,
yeah,
quick
in
thing to
some
copy.
ways, I'm surprised Uber or others haven't thought about it or having a patent like that. Because remember, Tesla, for the most part, these are defensive patents to make sure someone else doesn't
Yeah.
prevent them from being able to do something that they would like to do. Like, the 360 round kind of thing is like the reason they didn't have that in Tesla is because it was like a patented technology that no one wanted to share. And Tesla's like, well, we're not going to use it. Then with, Uber, you would think they could do something like that, but everyone's car is a little bit different. They don't necessarily have it in there. And of course, they have a driver, and the driver's going to sort of know where the passengers are and sort of know what they were doing. So it may not be important to them, but it's extremely important when you have robotaxi because you don't have a driver there to monitor anything. You really want to know what's going on. Did the person spill a cup of coffee or not? And did they kind of clean it up and hide the fact that it's there, but it's going to be discovered later or not discovered. But because you've seen that event, oh, coffee was spilled. No doubt about it.
Yeah, somebody was saying to me that imagine if somebody passed out because they got drunk and then they stayed there, how would you charge them for that extra hours? But then now you're realizing, well, what about safety? Is this
Yep.
person going to die, not going to die? And now, they're going to need to have some sort of sensor to know whether or not they're
Yeah.
still
Yeah.
breathing,
And
there's still
you know,
heart
when you think
rate.
about it, they talked about a gas sensor in there. And now that I think about it, a gas sensor could mean things like
Dead
CO2
people. Yeah.
or carbon monoxide. So you have a CO2 monitor in there that tells you, wait a minute, there's something breathing, living in here, and there's going up. We need to open up the windows or turn the ventilation system
Or,
back on.
yeah.
So there could be a
Yeah.
variety of reasons for being able to do that. So now
This
it just
is
occurred to me
brilliant.
what the gas sensor is there for.
Yeah. Wow. Thank you. And the other part that blew me away was when you said that, well, if they pick you up near a hospital, they may go, okay, we better, sanitize it a little bit more, whatever. Like they know
Just because
a
the
lot.
possibility is there. So what they're looking at is what's the possibility of
Yeah.
there's always going to be a correlation or
Viral.
something like that. I mean, you just think
Yeah.
about it, that I'm sure a lot of people get sick and getting picked up in a cab where the cab just dropped off a patient at the hospital. It's
Yeah.
it's going to happen all the
Fantastic.
time.
Thank you so much, Scott. That was fun. Appreciate your, spending the time to deep dive in this patent. But I agree with you. I think we're going to see this. If we saw this on Raw 88, it's going to just another thing that blows people's minds of how incredibly advanced these guys are thinking. Thank you, Scott.
Yeah.
Talk to you soon.
Thank you,
Bye,
Herbert.
everybody. I've created a website that is the most comprehensive resource for the Tesla investor. Please check it out. Simply go to my website at herbertong.com.